In 1911, the Persian Gulf Lights were established by the UK and Indian governments, but they only started charging nav dues since 1923. In 1949, the Persian Gulf Lighting Service was established by the UK government as it withdrew to the west. The Persian Gulf Lighting Service changed its name to MINAS in 1951, just reflecting local sensitivities. And in 2011, IFAN was established as more of the activities that MINAS were performing had an international dimension to them. So MINAS is now a branch of IFAN where it remains the registered not-for-profit entity based in London.
Whatever the opinions, we are currently holding the responsibility for the 54 aids to navigation assets, including 4 DGBS sites and the provision of NavText messages and the marine safety information, and this provision is and can only be supported by the payment of nav dues by ship owners who use the services. There is no government support other than the kind provision of the MINAS operating base in Manama by the government and the Kingdom of Bahrain. All the aids to navigation managed by MINAS are there because of the risk assessment we carry out in accordance with IALA's and standards to make navigation in this area compliant with international standards. We are holding this responsibility because of a continuing legacy from the UK and India's interest in the safe navigation of the Gulf waters, and because there is no agreement with any government on taking this responsibility over. And just a reminder that a MINAS NavDue port call for the largest container vessel, and similarly for a VLCC, is just US dollars 660, a levy unchanged since 2006.
The operational costs for MINAS are between $3 and $4 million a year, depending on the extent of overall overhaul activity. But this ignores any sort of capital costs. The income to balance these costs comes from nav dues. We raise nav due bills through our network of agents or work with owners to bill directly. And from the 200 to 500 movements that we see a week, many are outside the tariff criteria from our nav dues systems. We currently charge $1.65 US per net ton for vessels above 15,000 tons and is capped at 40,000 tons, resulting in that top levy of $660 Alan talked about. This hasn't changed since 2006, but what it does mean is that we've now got a gap between current income and expenditure. If all the ship owners shared the burden equally, then we would be close to break even considering the cost of capital. But it also relies on the self-help work that MINAS does by contracting for third-party work. It helps balance the books and helps the shipping owning community by keeping the nav dues costs down. We do believe the statements made by ship owners that the safety of their crews and ships is paramount. And from that, we assume that they also believe it's a necessity for the provision of safe navigation systems at sea. So it is a little unsettling to us that our billings for this essential safety system are often challenged and often unpaid.
Alan mentioned that that word costs. Costs is key to so many. I actually think that it's quite possible that many owners might not know of the value of MINAS to them and the navigational aids that they get from it. So, you know, perhaps it's ignorance, perhaps it's just a lack of awareness, or perhaps it's just not wanting to pay something that they don't feel they have to pay.
IFAN is registered in the UK as a not-for-profit organisation. MINAS is not similarly registered, but the fact that overall we are a not-for-profit organisation avoids the need to make and distribute profits, and allows us to ensure that any income over our operating costs of providing our services is donated to international organisations and projects promoting safe navigation. Organisations such as IALA, the South Pacific Community Project, and to the overall marine and maritime industry's benefit.
Aids to navigation is a matter of safety. There's an environmental issue to it. There's a safety of life of our seafarers. And so this is a service that we use that provides us good value. And it's a very important thing, and we would like to see it remain, because if the dues aren't paid and the service is no longer there, I hate to think what will replace it. Probably nothing. And that would be, I think, potentially disastrous. When you think of what the consequences might be to prevent a collision, if you say that $660 spent prevented a collision or potentially prevented a collision, of course, and nobody could deny it's good value. But there are times when the shipping market, depending on what type of ships you have, sometimes the market is in an awful state. Yeah. And dollars per day is a really, really important thing. So for some people, they may say $660 is $660 I don't have or can't afford or don't want to spend. But when you think of the consequences and what it might prevent and what you gain from it, personally, I think it's extremely good value, yes.
And I think that's been mentioned as well, that, good value, that's already been a point that's been mentioned. So good value strikes me as that nice balance between, cost and risk mitigation. And that, of course, is the fundamental point. Aids to navigation are a risk mitigation factor. That's what they're there for. And that's what all the lighthouse authorities will look at, what the volume of traffic, the type of traffic, and the degree of risk, the sort of depth of water, the size of the traffic that's using those waters, and so on. And then that suite I like to think of as aids to navigation, which can be a combination of visual aids, differential GPS, and radio navigation warnings. That's all part of that package that reduces risk. And that's of interest to everyone, as we've mentioned. That's interest to the master, it's interest to the ship owner and operator.
Well, this is an essential function for mariners. But I practically fell off the chair here when I heard that we're talking about a capped light dues of $660 per VLCC in a container vessel. I mean, in a previous life, I was a ship manager, and administering port disbursements was one of the first jobs that you do when you join ship operations. $600 would be a footnote on a port disbursement account. And yet it has a crucial contribution here to the provision of what is probably the most essential navigational aid to mariners in and around coastal waters and pilotage areas. So now, as an insurer, I would only echo the concern that there is, if there's any dilution or any reduction in Minas' activities providing such an essential service. It is a big concern to marine insurers. And I can only speak, I chair the pilotage committee of the international group. While the number of groundings, collisions, elisions is falling, the costs associated with those that are still occurring are increasing. So it is a major concern, this whole issue of safe navigation is a major concern for marine insurers. And that is really why we have a particular interest in this important discussion today. If there are some owners out there who feel that for whatever reason, they don't have the obligation to pay, that is simply wrong. Navigational aids, safe navigation is too important an issue to be allowed to be debated freely like that. It is not a social service or a free service. It has to be underwritten and funded appropriately.
Providing these services in the Gulf is 3 to 4 million US dollars per year. What is the cost of a single incident with an oil tanker or something? It is completely obvious that this is good value for money.
That the services provided by Minas is mainly for the international or the main passages in the Gulf that completes the services provided by the local states. mainly GCC. And the corporation is there with the GCC commissioning and the authorities as well. But there are definitely some difficulties on the maintenance and of some atoms and for entering the water. So each state economic water actually, we have a good connection with all the states, especially with the GCC and other entities who are involved, for any MSI service.
And in some ways, this is a type of insurance. You are taking a precaution. You are paying for a service that will quite possibly prevent a collision, an oil spill, or a loss of life. And so just thinking of this $660 on top of your annual insurance costs for however many calls you do, we did 73 last year in the past 12 months, it's nothing. It's inconsequential in the whole scheme of things if you look at it as a whole, as just an add-on to your insurance policies. So to us, it's a no-brainer.
If IFAN Minas were to conclude that the maintenance of the provision of these NavAids was not viable from the NavAids income, then we believe that the safe navigation of the Gulf would be severely compromised, and that possible situation must be a great concern to seafarers, ship owners, and their insurers.
As Alan said, until we are relieved of this responsibility, Minas will continue to provide the excellent service it does today until there is an alternative provision provided. We will find a way to balance the books, be that from convincing all those that receive the service that they should contribute, or we might need to look at the tariff, either changing that in some way. But who ultimately takes on the ATON provision in the future is still to be seen.